we are kicking off a brand new series of messages entitled In Gods We Trust, which sounds like either a very confusing title or something very intense, right? One or the other. But the whole series of messages is going to be a 4-part series, and it's all built on a very simple idea. And that's this: we all trust something. All of us. Every single one of us places our trust in something or someone. We all do. And sometimes when we trust something, it ends up putting that thing or that person in a very important place in our life, in a very important category. In fact, what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks is that sometimes when we trust certain things, it puts that thing or that person on the throne of our life. It puts them in a place of honor. It puts that thing in a place of trust and even power, and maybe even in a position of worship. Even though you don't sing songs to it, you live as though this thing or this person is one of the most important things in the world. And trusting things isn't bad. But trusting things and trusting people is important, and it's risky. So we want to make sure we trust the right things and the right people. Now, over the next few weeks, our working definition of trust is going to be this: that trust is whatever provides us with confidence, comfort, or security. So those things in your life that make you feel safe, those things in your life that make you feel confident, that thing that is the thing you always run back to when something goes wrong in life, when things aren't working out, when you feel stressed or overwhelmed. What are those things? What is that safety net? What is that thing or that person that you have believed will always be there for you? What is it that brings you comfort? That is probably something that you trust. And when we trust someone or something, it kind of becomes a foundation of our life, something that we begin to build on. And here is why this conversation matters and why we're going to spend 4 weeks talking about it. Because if we place our trust in things or people that are not trustworthy, if we place our trust in things that we should not, and then that thing that we trust fails us or lets us down, and it has been a type of foundation that we have built part of our life or our identity or our sense of peace and being on that thing, and then it fails us or lets us down, I'm telling you, it can cost you greatly. It can impact your sense of being. It can impact your peace. It can even impact your faith. It can cause you to doubt when we build our life on the wrong things, and that's why we're talking about this, because trusting things isn't bad, but we have to trust the right things. Now, this is where this idea intersects with our faith and why we're talking about it at church. It's this simple idea that it's easy. It's actually really easy to end up trusting in things other than God. Like, we're going to spend a few weeks talking about some of the common things that I think we trust that aren't God. And as we talk about these things, you might discover that, hey, I'm trusting some of those things. That maybe you are putting too much trust in things that aren't God. And if you discover that, I want you to know something important. There's not something wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just a person. It's actually really easy for us to place our trust in things other than God, and here's why. It's because we typically trust in things that feel certain. And following God doesn't always feel certain, because so much of following God requires faith in things we can't see. And because we can't even see God, we all run the risk of choosing to trust in something that we can see and can touch, something that at certain times in our life even feels more certain than God and faith. But here's what I want to invite you to do over the next few weeks. I want to invite you to ask an important and tough question. I want you to really examine the things that you trust, and I want you to ask yourself, are they actually more certain just because I can see them and touch them? Is it really more certain? Is it really something worth putting my trust in? Now, the 10 Commandments, something that we're all familiar with, were given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai, and we find the list of 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus chapter 20, and I want to read just the first one, commandment number 1. This is the very first thing that God decided to say to Moses on the top of the mountain. Exodus 20 verse 3, God simply says, "You shall have no other gods before me." That was the first one. It's like, here, I'm God, no other gods before me. Now, this commandment always confused me, and here's why. It's kind of strange because what we believe, if you're a Christian, is there are no other gods. So why would God tell us to not put something before him that doesn't even exist? Why would he care about us not putting other gods before him if there are no other gods? Like this is a confusing commandment. We believe as Christians that the God of the Bible, he is the one and only true God. So if there are no other gods, what is God warning Moses against? What does he not want us to put before him? I believe that God was not speaking here to an actuality. I don't think that he thought we were going to somehow discover another God. Oh, there is more. There's another God. I don't think he thought we were going to really discover another God. I think he was speaking to a mentality, to our capacity, your capacity, my capacity to put other things on the throne of our life. That we all have a capacity to place things in a category that is reserved for God and God alone. To put things in a category of trust and belief and confidence where it doesn't belong. And God was warning here, don't put something else in the position of God in your life. Don't do that. Now, like I said, we're going to talk about a few different things that we're going to call little g gods, right? Things that we can put on the throne of our life and trust in. And we're going to start with kind of a simple and obvious one. We're going to talk this first week about the God of stuff. So your stuff, your possessions, your money, your treasures, your wealth, your things. I think we all know that we have this ability to kind of get addicted to our stuff. I'm talking here about the things that we have and the things that we wish we had. How many of you have some things? How many of you have some things you wish you had? Okay, we all have some things, we all have stuff, and we all want more stuff. All of us do. Everybody's category of stuff is different, but you want more of it, whatever it is for you. For me, it's technology. I don't know if you've seen Napoleon Dynamite, but I often sing, I love technology. But no, anyway, move on from that. Mine is I always want the newest gadget. I can never have enough. I have some, I want more. We all have stuff, we all want more. And this is from the basic necessities of life, the things that we need, to the most ridiculous of excesses. Stuff is a part of all of our lives. Now, here's why this is really important and relevant to you as a high schooler. This is something you've probably already noticed because you're old enough and smart enough to notice, but if you haven't, you're going to hopefully begin to notice that there's something happening all around you. And it's kind of a choir and a chorus of different voices all trying to tell you the same thing. From movies to TV shows to ads, commercials, influencers on Instagram and TikTok, social media, all together are trying to convince all of us that the most important thing that you can be is rich and famous. That the most important stuff that you can have is nice, expensive stuff. That the biggest goal in your life should be to have more things than somebody else, the nicest of things so you can feel important and special. And in fact, weirdly, they've trying to convince us to believe that somehow you are actually more valuable or you matter more if you drive a Bugatti and have nice clothes. And in fact, especially young men, I'll just speak right to the young men, there is a whole bunch of male influencers online that are trying to tell young men that you are nothing unless you're making six figures and driving a nice car and have a big bank account, that this is what a man is. And this is what you need to be. And they show off their cars and they show off their houses. And they convince all of us that that is what we need to be. And listen, I'm not saying that stuff is bad. But when that stuff becomes the most important thing in our life, when that stuff becomes something that sits on the throne of our life, then it becomes dangerous. Now, this is not an uncommon thing in America. Americans are addicted to excess. We all want more than we can afford. In fact, I looked it up, and the most recent stats say that the total credit card debt in the United States is over $1.3 trillion, which I don't think any of us can wrap our heads around that number. It's just a massive number. And that's not mortgage debt. That's not car loan debt. That's revolving credit card debt. That's people buying things that they want but can't afford. And there's so much of it happening. And when you do that, you literally become enslaved to that stuff that you bought that you could not afford. And we spend so much money on things that aren't important. Another fun financial stat that I found was that last year, Americans spent over $13 billion on ice cream, which might be worth it. I mean, that's pretty important. It depends on the flavor, I suppose. And here's the thing. Stuff can be addicting. And it can easily, without us wanting it to be, it can go overboard and it can quickly come to something that we actually place our trust in. That we think because I've got some money set aside, or because I have this plan, or because I have this thing, or because I bought this thing that nobody else has, that's something that I can rely on. And here's where it becomes even more dangerous. We can all convince ourselves, and I have been guilty of this. We can convince ourselves not just that we want that thing, but we really talk ourselves into believing that I won't be happy unless I get, you fill in the blank. I won't really be happy until I get the newest AirPods. I won't really be happy until I have the latest gaming system. I won't really be happy until I have this brand of purse, this brand of shoes, until I get this kind of car, until I get a car. I won't really be happy until I have this. And we're waiting for stuff to give us our significance and our peace and our reliability and things we can trust on. Now, Jesus spoke a lot about our stuff and our money. He didn't shy away from it at all. And one of the greatest teachings that he gave on this was in Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to begin reading it in verse 24. Jesus speaking says this, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other." And he clears it up what he's talking about. He says, you cannot serve both God and money. So we already see here that money really isn't the problem. It's serving money. Well, how would I serve money? It's when we make money, or the stuff we can buy with money, the purpose and focus of our life, that we build our entire identity and schedule around getting more and more and more, to the point that money becomes our master. And that we wouldn't think of it this way, but ultimately we are serving that thing. And Jesus says you can't serve two masters, you got to pick. Money is not the problem, but when you let money be your master, you cannot have two masters. You know, there's another reason why this matters now. Like, I believe that this is something that if you learn now, if you learn it early in your life, before you graduate, before you move on into further adult life, if you learn this now, you can save yourself from building, as many adults have, building your entire schedule and identity around getting more stuff, around having more than their neighbor, around having a certain status so they can prove they're successful. There are so many adults who have built their life around that, and maybe you've seen it in your own family. That they've built their life around it, and it's consuming all of their focus and joy and identity. And what ends up happening is you find out sooner or later that what you've been chasing after actually comes up empty, and it really doesn't satisfy the way that you thought it was. And if you can get a hold of this truth now as a high schooler, you can save yourself from building your life around something that will let you down. And that's the next point I want to make, is that the Apostle Paul wrote about this too in 1 Timothy chapter 6. Verse 17, a powerful idea here. He says, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud, and not to what? Not to trust in their money. And why? Why? This is so powerful. He says, it's so unreliable. Here's why we don't trust in our money. You can't really trust it. It's unreliable. He says, what you should do is their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all that we need for our enjoyment. Our money's unreliable. It gives us an illusion of safety, especially as you get older and you have a retirement account and a savings account and a bank account. You're like, I'm good, I've got a backup plan. And you will find out really quick that what appears to be reliable, it is so unreliable. And I think we know this even now. We know this on some level, that the current state of our stuff is temporary and it can change at any moment. You can get the most awesome pair of shoes, and they can get stepped on at lunch and ruined. You can have the best phone. Listen, I pride myself in taking care of my phone. I've had my phone for like 3 years, and I dropped it the other day in a case like 3 feet, cracked. I've never cracked a phone. It was my first time. I'm really sad about it. And it can happen. Just in a moment, you drop it and it's broken. You can finally get that car, and you can get in an accident. You can have finally gotten a job and saved up money and then realize, wow, my money doesn't actually last as long as I thought it would. And you can end up out of the money that you thought you would have. Stuff can happen and our stuff can change in a blink. With the blowing of the wind, our stuff and the status of our stuff and how much stuff we have, it can change because things break. Or even if things don't break, something new is going to come out. And whatever you have that's the newest and coolest will only be the newest and coolest for about a minute and a half. And something newer and cooler will come out. And here's where this becomes a problem that we can all be guilty of, is that as things change and the stuff that we have changes, we can allow our confidence and our peace to shift with it. That when we feel like we have the nicest stuff, when we feel like we have what we want, or we feel like for that split second we have enough, that we have this peace and this joy and this contentment, but the moment our stuff changes, our peace goes with it. Our confidence goes with it. That's the danger of building your life on something that Paul said is so unreliable. Our confidence, our hope, it should not be in the stuff that we have or what we can do or what we can gain. Our confidence, our hope should be in God and God alone, who gives us, he's the source of everything anyway. And this is a complicated conversation because money and stuff is just always a part of life. You can't get away from it. So when we talk about this, that it's not supposed to be what we trust in, there can be this pushback that's like, so what are you saying? Like, I just shouldn't care about stuff? I shouldn't have nice things? Are you saying, because please don't go back and tell your parents I said this, are you saying that as I grow up, I shouldn't try to get a good job and be successful and make money? Or is that what you're saying? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying stuff is bad. I'm just saying we need to consider the important warnings given to us by Jesus. Let's continue reading in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. Jesus continues and says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. And then he poses this important question. He says, is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Like, such a powerful question. Like stuff isn't the issue, but Jesus is pushing deeper, and he's asking an important question that I'll echo tonight. Like isn't there more to life? I'll just rephrase it in the same, a little different way. The next slide. Isn't there more to life? Isn't there more to living than just getting stuff and having more than somebody else? Isn't the purpose of your existence on life more than just the accumulation of things? Isn't it about more than just meeting your needs or getting to a certain status or feeling like you're better than somebody else? Isn't there more to life? And the powerful and simple answer is yes. There is so much more to life. There is so much more than the stuff that you have or don't have. There is so much more than your bank account. There is so much more to your life. And the problem is not having stuff. The problem is when our stuff has us. I think that we all know that there's the ability for us to become enslaved to our stuff. That we feel this constant, endless pressure to get more and more and more. And then the more and more we get, as we get older, we actually end up having to work and toil and labor and worry just to keep the stuff that we have. And we literally become enslaved to it. And the problem isn't having stuff. It's when we let our stuff have us, when it becomes our master. We can't have two masters. And some of us can't even think about living generously or helping others or giving because we're just way too focused on getting more for ourselves. We can't even notice the need around us or what other people might need because all we're focused on is what we don't have. And all we can think about is what we want. But I want you to know the answer to Jesus' question, isn't there more to life? Yes. Life is about more than getting more for yourself. Life is about more than success according to TikTok. Life is about more than bank accounts and brand name clothes and expensive cars. Life is about more than your appearance or your reputation. Life is about more. You exist, I exist, we exist for the glory of God. You were put on this planet, and if you've never heard this, I hope you'll hear it tonight. You were placed here on purpose for a purpose by a God who made you unique and wonderful, and he loves you, and he wants you to be on this earth for a bigger purpose than having more stuff than somebody else. You are a unique expression of God's love and God's beauty in the earth, and you are here to fill a spot only you can fill, to accomplish a mission only you can accomplish, to have a role in God's kingdom that only you can have, and you have the capacity to do so much more than make money. You have the capacity to point other people to Jesus and leave a mark on eternity. You have the capacity to participate in God's ultimate plan for the world. You were made for so much more, and life is about so much more than this stuff that we see around us, that we want so bad, that we think will make us so happy. And if life really is about so much more, then why do we spend so much time worrying about the stuff that we have and don't have? Jesus goes on in Matthew 6 to talk about the fact that he cares for all of creation. That the reason why we don't have to worry is not because stuff doesn't matter, but because he takes care of his creation. If we look around, we see that he takes care of the plants and the flowers and the trees and the birds and the animals, and he tells us plainly and clearly that we are his favorite creation that he ever created. And if he's taking care of the birds, he will certainly take care of us. And then he finishes his amazing teaching in Matthew 6:33 with this amazing culmination of this lesson. And he says this, "But seek first his kingdom," God's kingdom, "and his righteousness," what God says is right. "And all these things," what things? All the things. All the things we worry about, all the things we need and want, all of the stuff. All of these things will be given to you as well. Essentially what Jesus says is don't get it backwards. Don't try to get all of the stuff so you can feel secure and then maybe think about following Jesus. No, concern yourself first and foremost with what matters most to God. Concern yourself with what God says matters most, not what the culture around us says matters most, or even what your own wants and desires say should matter most. Concern yourself with what matters to God most, and he will always take care of you. And in the process of refocusing off of stuff onto a reliable, unchanging God, we can rescue back some of our trust, some of our confidence from this unreliable stuff that will let us down. And we can begin to place our trust fully in God, who is fully trustworthy. So each week, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a different thing that we trust, but more importantly, we're going to end each week by talking about ways that we can dethrone these false gods from the throne of our heart. And so this first week, to dethrone the god of stuff, my challenge to you is to live generously. You know, the cure for greed and selfishness is generosity. The cure for self-focus is other focus. The cure for obsessing about stuff is to begin obsessing about what God wants to do through you in other people's lives. And I want to challenge you to live generously, to view your success in life not through the lens of what you have or keep, but through the lens of what you give away. Now, as a high schooler, this might be a little bit different than it would be for somebody else. Like some of you have jobs, you make income, and you should be generous with what you have because it was a gift from God in the first place, and you should hold it loosely. And if you learn this lesson now, before you have a mortgage and 3 kids to feed, it'll help you a whole lot. It'll help you a whole lot to learn this lesson now. I'm sorry that I scared you about the kids. Some of you might have kids one day. That's crazy, but yeah, you might. But before you have way more bills to have an excuse to not be generous, learn this lesson now. And if you're making money, you should be generous with your money. But I want to tell you something. Some of you don't have money. And sometimes when we don't make money, we don't have income, we feel like we can opt out of the generosity conversation, but it's not true. Generosity is not a dollar figure. It's a posture of life. It's an attitude of the heart. And I want to challenge you, and in fact, in a moment, you're going to go into small groups and you're going to brainstorm about this, what it might look like for a high schooler to live generously. But I want you to be creative. How can you be generous with your time? How can you be generous with your reputation? That maybe you've got a lot of friends at school and there's that one person that nobody wants to talk to and you're afraid if you talk to them, your friends might not want to talk to you. How can you be generous with your reputation? How can you be generous with your energy? How can you be generous with your time and attention? How can you give yourself away? How can you live in a way that makes you not be the point, but focuses on what God says matters most? And I promise you that when we begin to live generously, it will help us to dethrone the god of stuff from our heart, the unreliable god of stuff. It will help us dismantle that thing that we sometimes put too much confidence in. It will put it back in its proper place, help us to have only one true master, and give us a life worth living. Let's pray.